Hello Sophie, thank you for joining us at MYLIFEMYSAY to talk issues facing young Londoners today and also women's particular role in British politics.
You're very welcome. It's nice to be here.
Cheers, thank you. So in a couple of words, how would you describe London and what it's done for yourself in terms of opportunity and everything else in that?
I think London's a wonderful city. I think it offers a huge amount of opportunity, but unfortunately it doesn't offer that opportunity to everybody who lives in the city, and particularly if you're a woman living in London, you are more likely, as against the rest of the UK, to be out of work, to be living in poverty, and to be in danger on the streets and on the public transport systems, and that's why I'm running for Mayor of London.
What would you say has been the most enjoyable aspect of the campaign? I know a lot of people talk about yourself, and I've got a lot of friends who mention their respect for yourself in the sense that you've actually placed women's issues at the heart of politics. And I think a lot of other candidates have actually talked about these issues because of yourself. So what would you say has been your most enjoyable part? What would you miss? And if you were to do it again, what would you do differently?
So I think it's been a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. It's continuing, and it's exactly that. It's seeing the difference that this new, very fast-growing political party is making in this campaign. And because of our presence, we have now got one of the other candidates is calling himself a feminist. One of the other candidates is talking about domestic violence. We are starting to have a conversation about what's affordable for women in terms of housing too, and I think that is great to see, and it's down to the work that we have done. We are a team of very dedicated, very hardworking people. I'm very lucky that we've got such wonderful volunteers, such great grassroots movement right across London. I think what's been difficult about it has been balancing the time with my family. I've got 2 daughters and 2 stepsons, and I've barely seen them, and that's hard. That's been hard. They're getting. I've got a 6-year-old daughter, and I was leaving to go to work the other morning, and she said, "Mum, are you not mayor yet?"
Adorable. That's so cute. So as you said, you're a woman running to be London Mayor. So as a woman and a woman's role in politics, so we know that politics has been a domain typically dominated by a man and men in general, but I think a lot of women are now becoming involved into politics, but not as much as we'd like.
Yeah.
So, and we've kind of, you can say, been sidelined from Main Street and frontline politics. What would you do to encourage women to get more involved in politics in general?
Sure. Well, there's some very practical things. One of them is, I think a lot of young women in particular are put off politics because it's very combative. It's sort of men slugging away at each other in a way that's very sort of old-fashioned and aggressive, and I think that puts people off. And what we're doing with this party is we are presenting a collaborative approach. We are a non-partisan party. We work with people right across the political spectrum who want to prioritise equality for women. And we do things differently. As I said, we collaborate, we bring lots of people in. I think there's the work that we're doing in terms of actually giving women equal rights in the workplace is incredibly important in terms of getting a voice in politics, because going into politics is expensive. Campaigning is expensive. It requires having savings. It requires putting your life on hold for a long time. And that is why a lot of men do it, because they have the resources. Because, as we know, there is a big pay gap. There is a big gap in work, in terms of available work, and women taking on caring responsibilities. And so one of the things that we've done in terms of enabling some of our new candidates to stand is that we're supplying childcare bursaries, so that women with children can pay for childminders while they're out canvassing and working. And we're also providing a bursary for those candidates on a low income. And I think, it's not rocket science. It's very practical stuff that we can do to encourage more people to participate. And we are also working with, we're supporting campaigns by youth organisations like Bite the Ballot, like the Rio Ferdinand organisation, that support young people to make their voices heard. And we are also very much in favour of lowering the age of voting. We think people should be able to vote from the age of 16.
Great. So on the topic of young people in general, so with the elections coming up in May, the issues that we've been talking about have been voter turnout and whether young people will actually come out to vote. So do you think that the current methods that we have in place are sustainable, or do you think we should look towards more alternative means of voting, so whether that's online voting or whether we should elongate voting to the weekends? Do you think there is a better alternative for that would encourage young people to vote more?
Yeah, well, I think there's two things that will encourage young people to vote more. One is the work we need to do to reflect their needs and their concerns in policy. So young people don't go out and vote because they don't hear their needs and their concerns reflected in what people are talking about. So we have this huge debate in London at the moment, for example, about housing, but nobody's talking, or not talking so much about the importance of communities. And when we build houses, we need to be building youth centres, and we need to be working about how we involve everybody in these new communities that we want to create. So there's a piece around policy work, but there's also very practical stuff we can be doing, and I think online voting would be a sensible way to do it. Yeah,
so you would completely support online voting were it to...
I think it's. I personally think it's a sensible idea. We live our lives online these days.
Okay. So with the topic of, so you mentioned housing in terms of a particular issue that young people are facing. So for someone like myself, who I don't currently live in London, but I did want to pursue a career in British politics, move to London, it's difficult enough for people who currently live in London to afford their own house. So how would you tackle the problem of housing for young people like myself to come in from outer London into London and sustain a future here?
So our approach to the housing crisis is we're sort of calling out the other candidates a bit, because there is no silver bullet to the housing crisis in London, and anyone who presents themselves as the candidate with the idea that is going to fix everything is doing London as a disservice. The scale of the crisis is such that I think right now what we need to be doing is coming together, is changing the model of politics, is collaborating, and what I think London needs is a cross-party committee to pool the best ideas of everybody so that we can actually take a wide range of action and quickly.
It's more holistic as well.
Exactly, and within that specifically, what I want to do is look at a gendered approach to what affordable is, because right now in London, women earn a lot less than men. There is a 23% pay gap in London, and we crunched the numbers and we worked out that in London alone, last year, women earned £70 billion less than men. So if you're looking at what's affordable housing, for young women who are twice as likely as young men to spend more than half of their income on rent, again, that's something that we need to be considering when we do that. And our other approach, the other policy that we would want to bring to this cross-party collaboration is to ring-fence funds for housing for London's most vulnerable people, so the women and children who are trying to get away from domestic violence at home. We know that there is a big problem with domestic violence in London. There were 146,000 incidents reported in the last year. That is huge. And the refugees are on their knees, they are suffering from funding cuts, and the housing crisis means that there are fewer homes than ever.
So on the topic of that, in terms of young people facing these issues, so along with housing, you did mention briefly transport. What would you say is what is the most important issue facing young Londoners today?
You mean in transport? So there's a couple of things to talk about here. Everybody talks about building big networks. The approach to transport is let's make it bigger and bigger and bigger. And yes, absolutely, we have to keep contributing to our infrastructure. But we also have to think about making what we do have work better. So we've got some very practical policies that focus on giving people better access to what there is at the moment. And one of those is around safety. There is no point, I think, going ahead with the night tube if young women are afraid to use it. As far as I'm concerned, there is an extra tax that young women in London pay, and it is the transport tax for all the additional taxis that young women take because they are too... I mean, this is me telling you a story of several people who have come to me and said this, after hustings and after events, they've come and said, I feel like I pay an extra tax in London because I have to pay for taxis, because I don't feel safe on the tube late at night, I don't feel safe on the bus late at night. So we've got some very practical ideas around making sure, for starters, that people know about the Report It to Stop It campaign, that Transport for London, it's a great initiative, but not exactly what's that. People don't know what it is. So it basically gives you the information on how to report a crime, what the phone number you need, how to proceed. And we would want to have that information very clearly on the tubes and on the buses. We want to see Transport for London move sooner to carriageless trains that they are planning to bring in 2025. We think we should do that much faster because it allows women to move away from being, if they're being harassed, it's much easier to get up and walk away. But it also means that bystanders can see what's going on and participate. I think it's very odd, for example, that we have posters on the tube telling people not to eat smelly food and wear rucksacks, but there's nothing on there about respecting your fellow passengers.
Priorities, though, isn't it?
So I think that's really important.
Okay. So with the elections that are going to be over after May, another referendum that's coming up is the EU referendum.
Yes.
So how would you be voting in the EU referendum, and do you think a Brexit will help young Londoners, or would it be a detriment to young Londoners and women in general? So
the Women's Equality Party, like every other party, has a free vote on this, so our members can all vote according to how they see this. For me personally, I think it makes more sense to remain in Europe. I think it brings job opportunities, trading opportunities, and I think also it brings social protections that we've seen, such as maternity leave and workplace protection for women, that I think is really key.
Thank you for joining us, Sophie, at My Life, My Say, and for enlightening us on your opinion on British politics.
You're very welcome, it was fun.
And thank you for watching and engaging with our interviews at My Life, My Say. Any more interest, just subscribe to our link below.